Most people plant in straight rows, but what if I told you that planting in circles could grow healthier plants, save water, and even boost your harvest? I tested circular planting right here in the USA, and the results completely surprised me. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what happened, step by step. Welcome back to the Garden Sage. I test real gardening and farming methods so you can grow smarter, not harder. Recently, I came across an ancient technique called circular planting, a method used by indigenous farmers for centuries. Some people claim it increases yield by 200%, 300%, even 400%. That sounded unbelievable, so I decided to test it myself under real conditions here in the USA. In this video, I'll walk you through the setup, the growth stages, the challenges, and of course, the final harvest results. You're going to see everything. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the Garden Sage for more real-world gardening experiments, honest results, and practical tips you can use in your own garden. Now, let's get into the test. Circular planting is a method where crops are arranged in a round pattern instead of straight rows. It's not a new idea. Indigenous communities in North America, Africa, and parts of Asia used circular layouts for centuries. The idea behind it is simple but powerful. Circles create natural microclimates. The outer plants protect the inner plants from wind, heat, and soil erosion. Meanwhile, the center of the circle tends to hold moisture longer, which can help reduce water loss during hot days. In modern gardening, we rarely see circular planting because most large-scale farms rely on machinery designed for straight rows. But for home gardeners, small farms, and experimental growers, circular planting offers a unique opportunity to explore how plant spacing and layout affect growth. In this experiment, I wanted to understand whether circular planting actually makes a noticeable difference. Does it help plants grow stronger? Does it save water? Does it improve soil health? Or is it just a traditional method that looks interesting but doesn't offer real benefits? In this video, I'll walk you through everything I observed so you can decide whether circular planting is worth trying in your own garden. I've always been curious about gardening methods that challenge the usual way of doing things. When I first heard claims that circular planting could increase yield, I wasn't convinced. Some people online mentioned numbers like 200% or even 400% more production, but without clear evidence. As someone who values honest, real-world testing, I wanted to see what would actually happen under normal conditions here in the USA. And another reason I wanted to test this method is because many gardeners today are looking for ways to grow more food in smaller spaces. Circular planting is often described as space-efficient, water-efficient, and beginner-friendly. If even half of those claims were true, it could be a useful technique for home gardeners across the USA. I also wanted to understand how circular planting affects plant behavior. Would the plants compete more? Would they shade each other too much? Or would the circular layout create a supportive environment where plants help each other grow? These questions motivated me to set up a controlled experiment, one circular plot and one traditional row plot, using the same seeds, soil, and watering schedule. My goal wasn't to prove anything right or wrong, but simply to observe the truth. To keep the experiment fair and transparent, I created two identical growing areas in my backyard. The first area was planted in traditional straight rows, the way most gardeners and farmers do it. The second area was arranged in a circular pattern with a radius of about 6 feet. Both plots used the same soil mix, the same fertilizer, and the same type of seeds. I chose a fast-growing vegetable crop so I could monitor changes more easily. I marked the circular plot using a center stake and a string to ensure the spacing was even. The outer ring had slightly taller plants, while the inner ring had shorter ones. This layout is often recommended because it helps create a natural protective barrier around the center. For watering, I used a simple schedule, the same amount of water for both plots, delivered at the same time of day. I also monitored sunlight exposure, soil moisture, and plant height every week. My goal was to eliminate as many variables as possible, so the only real difference between the two plots was the planting layout. This setup allowed me to observe how the plants behaved in each environment. Within the first week, I noticed something interesting. The circular plot held moisture longer than the row plot. The soil in the center stayed damp even on warmer days, while the row plot dried out more quickly. This wasn't a dramatic difference, but it was noticeable. By the third week, the plants in the circular plot were slightly taller and had a deeper green color. Another observation was how the plants interacted with each other. In the circular plot, the outer plants acted like a natural windbreak. On windy days, the inner plants barely moved, while the row plants swayed more. This might have helped reduce stress on the circular plants. However, it wasn't all positive. The circular plot developed weeds faster in the center because moisture collected there. I had to weed that area more often. Also, the circular layout made it a bit harder to walk through without stepping on plants. Overall, the growth stage showed clear differences between the two methods. The circular plants looked healthier and more uniform, while the row plants grew at slightly different rates. These early signs made me curious about what the final harvest would reveal. After about 60 days, it was time to harvest. I measured the yield from both plots carefully to keep the results accurate. The row plot produced a solid, healthy harvest, exactly what you'd expect from a traditional layout, but the circular plot produced noticeably more. When I weighed everything, the circular plot had about 62% more yield than the row plot. This wasn't a dramatic 400% increase, but it was still a meaningful improvement. The circular plants were thicker, had more branches, and produced more usable vegetables. I also noticed fewer pest issues in the circular plot. The dense outer ring seemed to discourage insects from reaching the center. Another interesting result was water usage. Even though both plots received the same amount of water, the circular plot retained moisture better, meaning it could potentially use less water in future tests. These results don't mean circular planting is always better. Different climates, soil types, and crops may produce different outcomes. But in this test, under normal backyard conditions in the USA, circular planting clearly performed better than traditional rows. Based on this experiment, circular planting has several clear advantages. It improves moisture retention, creates natural wind protection, and encourages more uniform plant growth. It also produced a higher yield in this test, which is something many gardeners will appreciate. For small gardens, circular planting can be a fun and effective way to maximize space. However, there are also limitations. Circular plots are harder to weed, and the layout can be inconvenient if you need to walk through the garden frequently. This method also isn't practical for large farms that rely on machinery. It's best suited for home gardeners, hobby growers, and people who enjoy experimenting with new techniques. My final takeaway is simple. Circular planting is worth trying if you're curious and want to explore a different approach. It won't replace row planting for everyone, but it offers real benefits that surprised me. If you enjoy learning through hands-on experience, this method can teach you a lot about how plants interact with their environment. If you want more experiments like this, make sure to subscribe to The Garden Sage, where we grow smarter, one test at a time. After running this experiment from start to finish, one thing is clear. Circular planting has real potential, especially for home gardeners who want to make the most of their space. It's not a magic trick, and it won't replace traditional rows for everyone. But in this test, it delivered healthier plants, better moisture retention, and a noticeably higher yield. If you enjoy trying new gardening methods, or you're looking for ways to grow more food in a small area, circular planting is definitely worth exploring. And remember, every garden is different. What worked here in the USA might perform differently in your climate, so feel free to adapt, experiment, and make it your own. If you found this experiment helpful, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who loves gardening. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to The Garden Sage for more honest tests, practical tips, and real-world results. Thanks for watching, And I'll see you in the next experiment, where we keep growing smarter, one test at a time.